Hello, guys. I'm Sudarshan, a Starshine Star. How are all of you doing? I hope you're doing very, very well. It is a beautiful Thursday. It's Guru Day. Every Thursday is Guru Day. It's March 19th, 2026. I was going to say, wow, I can't believe how it's March 19th already, but honestly, March has been like a slow month. Like, it's been just seems like slow dragging with massive action. I can't explain it. What do you think? Let me know. Drop your comments. Give me some emojis. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell, thumbs up, all that good stuff. If you're not listening to this on my YouTube channel, it's called It's the Dazzling of the Light. Or you can just go to YouTube and type in at Sudarshan, a Starshine Star. I think it's got to be about 320 podcasts there now. A couple of them are actual videos. You can see me talking in a short playlist I made there, very short. So check that out if you like. And thank you in advance. Let me see. I like to begin all of my clips with the three opening prayers, which are very short, and they're in Sanskrit and Telugu. I do this to bless, uplift, purify, and protect you, me, and this clip. They are the Guru Mantra, the Ganesha Mantra, and the Gayatri Mantra. Before I do that, I command on the sacred blood of Jesus the Christ, Yeshua, to flow over all of us and bless us and all of our human beloveds and all of our animal beloveds. Cast out all satanics and all satanic attachments. Cast out all demonics and all demonic attachments. Cast out the spirit of fear. Cast out the spirit of pain, please, Yeshua. Cast out all negativity in thought, word, and deed, including negative memories, negative karmas. Cast out mental illness, fogginess, confusion, fuzziness, lack of clarity, negative delusions and illusions, error think. Cast out all poverty, scarcity, lack, the feeling of never having enough, neediness without end. Cast out all self-rejection, all self-dislike, all self-hatred, or the projection of that onto anyone or anything else, or the reception of that from anyone or anything else. Thank you so much, Yeshua. Jesus the Christ, please send your healing presence now. Please heal the wounds in our souls. Thank you, Yeshua. We receive your healing present, your blessings, and your divine protection. Amen. Svaha. I command on the sacred, divine, eternal Mother presence of Mother Mary, who is for everyone. She is for everyone in the creation. This is not about religion. It's far beyond religion for Yeshua and Mary, with Yeshua and Mary. Thank you, Mother Mary, for being here with us in this eternal moment, ever more fully and completely, and blessing us with your love, protection, guidance, comfort, your cool brow, as well as your fiercely loving mother's heart. And thank you for all the teaching that you give us, along with all of your unconditional love. And thank you for the boundaries and the discipline that you sometimes have to implement, like any good mother who wants her children to be really, really strong, healthy, beautiful, wonderful, blessed, and divine. Thank you, Yeshua. Thank you, Mother Mary. Amen. Svaha. And now to the prayers. Om, 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 Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahmam, Tasmahi Sri Guruve Namaha. Om Suklam Bharataram Vishnum, Sishivarnam Chatobhujam, Prasanavaranam Dhyaye Sarva Vignyupashante. Om Bhur Bhuva Suvaha Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhako Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Naha Prachodayat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Wonderful. Well, I think I'm going to call this clip Cartels, U.S. Marine Smackdown in Ecuador. Yes, this is a wonderful... I was going to put this up yesterday, but I was so busy because it was the peak day of the new moon, and I have a lot of wonderful divine things to do. on that day. Um, this is from Cash Jordan. Now, let me just get to the reading. The U.S. just carried out a historical military intervention in South America at the request of the Ecuadorian government. For the first time, the U.S. military has carried out a land operation in South America, striking cartels in Ecuador. Video from the U.S. Southern Command shows the operation being carried out. So the U.S. has opened up a new facet or a new front in the war on cartels, which nobody thought would ever happen. And for decades, these criminal organizations have been given free rein over large swaths of South America. A coalition led by the U.S. has come together with the sole purpose of capturing these bad guys once and for all, which is great news for everyone except for the bad guys. And then here's a World News Channel newscaster speaking. U.S. Southern Command saying that American forces have launched an operation alongside Ecuadorian military forces in Ecuador. The military has released very few details about these operations, but officials say this mission is part of a broader campaign against cartel networks operating across the region, geographic and historical neighbors tonight, officially joining the Trump administration's America First policy for the Western Hemisphere. And then here's President Trump speaking. He said, "The heart of our agreement is a commitment to using lethal military force to destroy the sinister cartels and terrorist networks. Once and for all, we'll get rid of them. We need you to help. We need your help. You have to just tell us where they are." And then here's Secretary of State Marco Rubio speaking at the Shield of the Americas summit. "And the countries represented here today, all 12 of the leaders here, are allies. But they're much more than allies, they're friends. At a time when we have learned that oftentimes an ally, when you need them, may not be there for you. These are countries that have been there for us, and these are leaders that are not just allies, they are friends, and they are always willing to work and cooperate with the United States, and we're grateful to you." And then the newscaster says, "President Trump has invoked the Monroe Doctrine as they work to combat the cartels. Now, this means if Europe tries to interfere with the Americas, the U.S. will see it as a threat. In return, the U.S. wouldn't interfere in European wars or colonies." And then Cash says, "So, if you're a criminal in South America, now might be the time to turn yourself in. Everyone's coming for you." And what nobody's talking about is the timing of this cartel's counteroffensive. It's perfect. Not only are these criminal organizations at their weakest right now, they've also got nowhere to run to, as countries like Mexico are now taking charge of their own border, working with the United States to capture folks who've been on the run for years. While Venezuela specifically is no longer a cartel's first dictatorship in cahoots with America's enemies, but is now a nation on its way to prosperity and self-determination. Two things that can't exist on a continent run by the bad guys, who were enriched over the last 4 years of an open U.S. border that allowed them to make more money than anybody ever thought possible. Money which was then used against the people of the countries these thugs call home, making them more powerful in many cases than the military and law enforcement resources deployed to stop them, while helping them make deals with hostile foreign powers wishing to push their influence in our hemisphere as well. Which brings us to the real reason this new coalition is so important. Over the last few years, left-field governments in South America have been given the boot, and many countries have been working independently to stamp out crime and corruption, but now they're all working together with the United States. And this is going to change South America in ways nobody wants to give any attention to. And while mainstream networks have been forced to cover the successful efforts of El Salvador in combating crime within its borders, it seems open borders proponents don't want to talk about how Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, and Ecuador have also been heading in the right direction as of late, which is terrible news for criminals who want to make money and exploit innocent people everywhere. And then the news journalist lady says 12 leaders from Central and South America taking their places around President Donald Trump for the first Shield of the Americas summit. Some smiling, others their faces grim. All of them here for a single purpose, to form America's counter-cartels coalition. And listener, I have to interrupt to say, yeah, that spin on some of them have grim faces, like as if they're forced to be there. Instead of grim and that negative spin on it, I would say maybe they just had serious faces. Maybe they just weren't smiling. Okay, so the heart of our agreement is a commitment to using lethal military force to destroy the sinister cartels and terrorist networks once and for all. President Trump is speaking. We'll get rid of them. We need your help. You just have to tell us where they are. Cash. You know what? If you're a normal person with common sense, you're going to hear this and see this coalition. You're going to think, why didn't the world do this sooner? Why have we waited decades to work with countries in South America to team up for the betterment of the law-abiding all over our hemisphere, to go after criminals that don't care about people, that just want to make money at the expense of their own people, of their friends, their neighbors, their communities? Why is this taking so long? Well, this is because for decades, left-leaning governments and viewpoints have existed in America and in these countries which sympathized with these criminals and excused their behavior as being the fault of perhaps the United States or of some other external force, not greed and corruption. And when you've got countries like Venezuela and Cuba working overtime to cooperate with America's enemies and harbor criminal cartels and organizations, it looked to the world as if crime in South America was just the status quo, and nothing was ever going to be done about it. But now that the U.S. borders closed, and these criminals are making way less money, they've got less available to influence politicians and buy weapons. And now with the U.S. military leading the charge against these countries, all the way from Mexico to El Salvador, bad guys have nowhere to run off to and hide. And then Marco Rubio speaking. An honor to be able to serve you in your administration. And Mr. President, 2 points I want to make. The first is we have a lot of allies around the world, and we are grateful for our allies and the countries represented here today. All 12 of the leaders here are allies, but they're more than allies. They're friends. And President Trump says, yep. Then Rubio says, at a time when we have learned that oftentimes an ally, when you need him, may not be there for you. And Cash exclaims, oh. And then Rubio says, these are countries that have been there for us. And these are leaders that are not just allies, they are friends. And they are always willing to work and cooperate with the United States. And we're grateful to you. And Cash says, this is a South American NATO. And you know what? It's actually going to work because everybody's got a common objective here. None of these countries wants to see criminal organizations marauding through their streets, making money at the expense of their own electorate. Those days are over. And you have a significant amount of unity here. Unity which the United States has not been experiencing with its oldest allies over in Europe. That's for sure. And the Secretary of State said something important. He said, not only are these countries our allies, but they're also our friends, elevating the Shield of the Americas above the level of some NATO arrangement that doesn't really work out too well for everyone. But here's the problem. If you are a cartel kingpin and you're watching this, you gotta be shaking. Then there's a news person that says, first time the U.S. military has carried out land operations in South America. And they show a video from the U.S. Southern Command, which showing the operation being carried out earlier this week. And it shows the U.S. and Ecuadorian military working side by side. What was called, quote, a fight against organized crime. Ecuador's president last month ordering his cabinet to speak out or to seek out help from allied nations in fighting cartels. And Cash says, oh, look at that. You don't hear too much about that, do you? from the open borders crowd that wants to see criminals making money off things like illegal immigration. Nope. You don't hear anything about how that disenfranchises the very countries in South America we're told are so awful that we need illegal immigration to rescue people, when the reality is criminals are getting rich, destroying this entire hemisphere. But not anymore. And before you think to yourself that this is U.S. imperialism, yet again, it was the Ecuadorian government that went on a mission to seek help to get criminals out of its country, which means the United States was invited to help tackle a problem that affects Ecuador and the United States. These are not just local issues. These criminals, they don't have boundaries. They don't have borders. They see a crime of opportunity, and wherever it is, they want to go and commit that crime of opportunity. They don't care where it is. They don't care who's nearby when they do it. And this explains why the lack of cooperation that has existed on our side of the planet for decades empowered these people. And then the news journalist lady says, now the military has released very few details about these operations, but officials say this mission is part of a broader campaign against cartel networks operating across the region. Now, earlier this week, Southcom Commander General Francis L. Donovan said, quote, "The Ecuadorian people, along with other citizens across the region, have experienced the violence and corrosive consequences of terrorism up close and in their neighborhoods. This time, the time is now for our partners in the Western Hemisphere to take decisive action against this scourge, with the assurance that Southcom has their back." Cash. And that's huge. That explains why there has never been a coordinated effort before. You need leadership now. For the first time, not just on the U.S. border, but here on the entire hemisphere where the United States was located. You have leadership that wants to get rid of criminal organizations that hurt everybody. This is not a unilateral thing that only benefits the United States. And what you'll never see on mainstream news is that criminal organizations in some of these countries are so powerful and so brazen. Daily life that we take for granted in America as being normal and free from violence does not exist there. And many of these countries for years have been hanging on the edge, so to speak, with these criminals doing whatever they can to destabilize local governments, to take out those who might want to work to get them off the streets and behind bars. But now, with the United States being involved, these nations can go full on, not just enforcing their own laws and going after criminals within their own borders, but working with all of their neighbors to make sure that those criminals can't just go over here and hide in this place. And then the news lady, journalist, she's standing at the U.S. southern border, and she said, he actually created a coalition, the America's Counter Cartel Coalition, where several countries from the Western Hemisphere are joining together to combat the criminal cartels. They also said that President Trump has invoked the Monroe Doctrine as they work to combat the cartels. And Cash says, guess what? If you get rid of lawlessness and corruption in your side of the globe and everything's well run, well managed, criminals are terrified to show their faces. In fact, they're so terrified, they start obeying the laws. That's not going to be a reason for anyone to come over here and try to interfere with anything. Chaos brings interference. If you want to have interference from foreign powers, whether it's China or Russia or whether it's countries in Europe, allow there to be chaos. China and Russia don't have a foothold in places like Venezuela anymore because law and order has been restored to Venezuela. Now, listener, I have to interrupt to comment. What's really not being said here, but it's really important, is City of London, is the satanic elites out of City of London with their British Empire building that are behind this, that they puppet all of this, these narco-terrorism states. So that's who the main real culprit is. And we don't have to go even on that note to go too far back into history to see what the City of London satanic elites did to knock out Imperial China with their opium wars. Yeah, look into that if you want to. Okay, so let me go back to this reading. So then Cash is saying, even in Mexico, we're seeing massive anti-cartel operations forcing out criminals that have controlled areas along the U.S. southern border for decades. And now Stephen Miller is speaking. And for too long, we have allowed foreign enemies, foreign adversaries, and enemy terrorist organizations to control territory and spaces in this hemisphere, where they can project power, project threats, and directly threaten the lives of your citizens and our citizens. And so, under the leadership of President Trump, we are using hard power, military power, lethal force to protect and defend the American homeland. Not a single one of your nations should tolerate the existence of a single square mile of territory that is under the control of any entity other than the sovereign governments of your country. And then Cash says, and all those folks out there that say, oh, President Trump, he just wants foreign wars. He's a warmonger. He wants to fight the whole world. I mean, this is literally the opposite of that. The conflict in Iran's the same thing. What you don't do is allow those who hate you and hate your citizens to get so powerful that they're able to take action based on their beliefs. That's what we're looking at here with the cartels as well. And then the news reporter says, to strengthen cooperation in the fight against the cartels. Now the secretary says illegal immigration drives unchecked crime and violence, adding that cartels are a threat to the peace of this hemisphere. Cash, right. He's 100% right on that. And now we cut to Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, speaking. He said, they would recognize it and they would appreciate it. We are at long last putting America, Americans, and the Americas first, ensuring peace through strength and restoring common sense. And Cash says, and this is what people forget. All the open borders advocates, they say, oh, well, because there's crime in South America and people are fleeing that crime, we need to open the U.S. borders because that's going to rescue people. That is literally the opposite of what we should have been doing this entire time. Closing the U.S. border has been the best thing for law and order on all sides of it. Criminal organizations were thriving in that open border. They were making a fortune off of illegal immigration alone. What did they do with that money? They brought it back home and bought weapons and committed even more crime and got even more powerful. On top of that, you have organizations like Hezbollah operating in Venezuela, which was a cartel's first dictatorship run by and for our enemies. This is a disaster. If you want to power up criminals, give them safe havens. Open the U.S. border. Want to power up criminals? Let America's enemies come into a country that has allied itself against us for the purposes of evading sanctions, with projecting foreign powers to try to weaken us somehow. Do all of that, and you'll have a crime disaster in South America. Then Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, speaks again. And as you said, Mr. President, these are also countries with extraordinary potential. Some are fulfilling it. Some are well on their way to fulfilling it. And this is important. We want to be a partner with you in that. We want the world to see that when you are a friend and an ally of the United States, it is a good thing. It's reciprocated. It comes back the other way as well. And so the fact the president is here today and making this a priority is so critical. And Cash says, you know what? All these folks that say we need to open the border, that we should have unlimited illegal immigration with no consequences, what they inherently believe is that these countries in South America have zero potential. But you just heard the Secretary of State that this is far from true. Countries in South America have amazing potential. It's just been stolen from the people of these great countries for a long time. Why would we not want to help countries south of our border from reaching their highest levels of success that has never been allowed before because of crime and corruption? Of course, we should be helping our neighbors in South America. That's a good thing for everybody, to help your neighbors, to help your fellow man, to be a friend in your community of countries on this side of the globe. And then Stephen Miller speaks again. We've learned after decades of effort that there is not a criminal justice solution to the cartel problem. The reason why this is a conference with military leadership and not a conference of lawyers is because these organizations can only be defeated with military power. And I see some heads nodding up front because they understand. You're dealing with a lot of lawyers in your own country, I am sure. You have my permission not to listen to them. And then Cash says, and once you start doing this, once everybody starts working together, all these criminals that have been hiding all over the place, gathering their forces, figuring out what they're going to do next, they're not going to have a place to do that anymore. Cartels are going to go extinct in South America. And then the news journalist lady says, the administration's America's first for the Western Hemisphere. And then Secretary of State Pete Hegseth speaks, restoring the warrior ethos, rebuilding our military to historic levels, and reestablishing deterrence in this hemisphere. And then the news lady journalist speaking out of Doral, Florida, said, and there are countries that were not invited to this conference. 2 allies that are most affected by the cartels being Mexico and Colombia, just not invited. Also Nicaragua and Cuba, not invited. And Cash says, okay, so we know why certain countries were not invited to this. First of all, Cuba not invited, Venezuela not invited. You must realize that the regime in Cuba is about to fall. The communists in Cuba, by the way, have not been a source of peace in our hemisphere at all. Yes, listener, understatement of the century. They sent their foot soldiers to Venezuela for purposes of helping the Maduro regime stay in control. Venezuela also not invited, but the United States is over there overseeing a peaceful transition of power, which is going to benefit the people of Venezuela. Mexico also not invited, but the Mexican president has totally done a 180 when it comes to cartels over the last several weeks. She's already working with the United States and special forces to go after kingpins in that country. So there are a lot of good things happening. And you know what's going to happen here? Now that everybody is getting on board with getting rid of these criminal organizations, it's going to be hard to see the lone holdout who wants to be the Colombia, right? Colombia had some very nasty things to say about our president, but after a recent meeting at the White House, these tensions simmer down, and even Colombia is going to get on board with helping get rid of criminal organizations. It would be very hard to stand alone as the one criminal safe haven in South America. You would essentially be isolating yourself from all of your neighbors by harboring criminals that harm their country and your own country. People would want to flee your country and go live anywhere else. So this is like economic obliteration. You're guaranteeing for yourself if you want to be the lone holdout here. Yeah, true that. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe, listener, and why not get notified and join my YouTube channel? It's pretty fun, I think. I'm going to start saying this a lot. I have to say, because all of this is leading into, yes, there are other things that happened today that I really want to do podcasts on, but I had to at least get this one out as kind of foundational for all the cartel busting that's going on in Mexico and in Latin America right now by the U.S. And in conjunction, like in Mexico, the Mexican military is also working with U.S. military to bust the cartels, which is fantastic. The Monroe Doctrine, which is now really the Don Roe Doctrine after President Donald J. Trump, the Don Roe Doctrine. This is what we're seeing coming into play. I mean, the world has shifted now. It's not going back. This is a new earth. This is a new order of things. A reorganization, geopolitically, in so many different ways. I'm not going to go on that tangent right now, but I want to say this, that really what the Don Roe Doctrine is all about across the board is sovereign nations and economic growth. That's it in a nutshell. Very easy to say. Sovereign nations and economic growth. And all of that is just the very antithesis of what the satanic elites that have controlled this earth realm for the most part for thousands of years, and as evidenced in present day, modern day globalists, their satanic anti-human agenda, one government for all, one religion for all, satanic, one rule for all, and like Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum, WEF, famously quoted all the time, you will have nothing and you will be happy. Well, all of that rotten satanic apple cart has been upended. We are now moving into uncharted waters, very exciting times, but yeah, it takes effort. It takes some struggle. It takes fighting. It takes battling. This is huge. Um, but the best is yet to come. God bless you and yours. I always end my clips with a very short closing prayer. What I'm saying is, God bless all beings in all worlds. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Yes, peace, peace, peace is what we're looking forward to when all of this great cleanup and scouring and purification and war, necessary war, is completed. Thank you so much. God bless you and yours. I'm sending much love and big hugs to you and yours. I'll see you when I see you, and bye-bye for now.